Welcome YouTube friends and family, and Happy New Year. So I'm actually starting this video on New Year's Eve. I'm going to do a few things, and I thought, how do I want to start out the new year with all of my great subscribers? And y'all know I like to laugh, right? Even at my own expense. I need to take down some of these decorations. Let me get this unplugged. I should have done that. Okay, there we go. So I thought, what funny stories can I share with you all that wouldn't be offensive to anyone? So I will fully admit I have some funny funeral stories, but I don't think that's this is the right venue for it, right? So I'm putting away the ceramic little house that I made my mom and the carolers first. So I thought, well, what has really been funny in my life? And y'all know I've been a nurse I graduated from nursing school with my RN in 1981, which makes that 42 years of being a licensed nurse. Hopefully I won't do that. And I can tell you a ton of funny stories about my nursing career without violating HIPAA or being at the expense of any person. So anybody I'm going to talk about is probably long deceased. So before I got my nursing license, when I was working through nursing school, oh, y'all, I'm going to laugh through this whole thing. I worked in a long-term care facility, i.e. a nursing home, right? And I've always had a passion for older adults. I was raised with my parents' friends being around and just, learning to interact with adults, and then also finding wisdom from grandparents, etc., etc. So always kind of had a soft spot for older people. So this facility was a very nice facility, as facility goes, but we had an emergency. And y'all, back in the day, see, a lot of these disasters that happened back in the day, we have new equipment, new standards, new protocols, so it would never happen again. So in today's world, if emergency oxygen is needed and you're in a hospital, it comes through the wall from a central tank. In most facilities, they have what are called oxygen concentrators, which they can be portable or they can be about like yay big. And what they do is they take room air and they divert out the gases and other gases and concentrate down the oxygen so that you have basically an endless supply of oxygen. You don't have to change out empty tanks, etc. So e-tanks, emergency tanks, are about, maybe this big, like certainly 18 inches. But back in the day, y'all, we had the tanks that were pretty much, I'm going to say like up to here on me, so maybe close to 5 foot tall. So they were on a dolly, and they had a cone on the top. You had to twist off the cone, and then you had access to hook into the oxygen and set the flow rate. And even as a nurse aide, you got to realize this was in the 70s, right? Before I was a nurse. Nurse aides could do a lot more because things were not as regulated that many years ago. So a person, a patient, a resident, was having a respiratory crisis and needed oxygen like right now. So the nurse grabbed the oxygen, which was on the dolly. Well, the only thing that held that oxygen in place, this has changed, was a very thin chain link that went across and hooked in. And I mean, it was like this big of a chain. Like it wouldn't have held anything because those big tanks were very, very heavy. So she goes whipping down the hall, and I could see, I was behind, you know, going to assist. I could see that oxygen tank going wobble, wobble, and I was like, whoa, 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 that chain's not gonna hold it. And that oxygen tank, and by the grace of God, no one was killed. So it is kind of a sad story. That oxygen tank flipped off, broke the chain, hit the floor, and by hitting the floor, the cap cracked open, and it broke the seal. And I can't tell you exactly how it happened. I just saw it happen. And that thing went off like a rocket. And I will say, anybody who had been in front of it would have been seriously injured. Thankfully, I worked a 3 to 11 shift, and this was later in the evening, so there were no residents or care workers in the hall. It went down the hall, through the all-glass emergency exit door, all the way down and landed in the creek. And y'all, all I could do was laugh. And I knew that was an inappropriate reaction. So I excused myself and went and got another oxygen tank. And the person survived and was fine. But that was one of the funniest things I have ever seen. And through the whole night, the rest of the evening, I'd go, everybody would just start laughing because it was just so unexpected. So that was one of my first fun memories. So we've got this boxed up. I'm going to go do the trees. Excuse me, after I hiccup a whole bunch of times. The bottle brush trees next, so stay tuned. Oh. All right, y'all. Story number 2. While I take down my bottle brush trees. I've got them all gathered here on the floor. I did want to take a moment and show you these. I didn't show them this year. And I have some true vintage glass beads in here as well. But these bottle brush trees are just gorgeous with the glitter, etc. Now, some of them are stamped Japan. Some of them I believe to be Holt Howard, which we've talked about Holt Howard before. So I have a wide variety. Now, how did I end up with all of these trees? I went to an auction in the summer, and the auction house had a lot of Christmas things. In fact, they had a lot of, I think it's called Department 56, which they actually stopped auctioning because nobody would bid on it, and they didn't want to sell out all of the Christmas sets for, like 2 for $1. But I got this huge box, and on the top, it was junk. Like a lot of it I threw away, like broken this and that. But in the recesses, and I was the only person that bid, and the bid started at $5 that bid on this. And you'd be hard-pressed buy an elaborate vintage tree for $5. Okay, enough about that. So my second story, y'all. Now, this may not be so funny to all of you, but I think one of the things about being a nurse that you learn is things don't always go as you would plan. Not every patient's going to be super sweet and super cooperative. Some people are going to be huge challenges, especially if they have mental health issues or if they're struggling with side effects from medication, like if they've had a big surgery. Okay, let me grab this other box because we're going to put the tree away too. So this story is about a little lady. I won't tell you her name. She was 100 years old 40 years ago, so I'm quite sure she's no longer with us, but still. In case somebody's listening and they're like, that resembles my fill-in-the-blank mother, grandmother, whatsoever. I was warned when we changed shifts and report that she was quite a handful. And she had pernicious anemia, which meant she was losing blood somehow, or her blood cells were degrading. So she was chronically and constantly in the hospital for blood transfusions. So I didn't think a lot about it. But when someone is receiving a blood transfusion, which wasn't foreign to me, you do have certain monitoring that you have to do. Why is that backwards? Okay, maybe go back. Okay. To make sure that they're doing okay with the blood transfusion. Now, for some people too, if you're pushing a whole bunch of fluids and a whole bunch of blood, it can cause tummy troubles. I'm going to take the batteries out of this. So, I mean, we're all adults here. Pepto-Bismol would have been in order, right? So this was before nurses carried little cell phones or pagers or walkie-talkies. All right, so over the loudspeaker comes nurse for room 222 to the room immediately. I'm thinking, oh, sweet Jesus, is she having a reaction to her blood transfusion? Right as I came around the corner, splat, a big pile of poo hit me in the head. Now, back in the day, we were still wearing nursing caps. Thank God those days are over. It was an infection control issue. So I had all this poo in my hair, which I was wearing my hair naturally curly then. A huge mess with the patient who was having a poo party, and I had to get her cleaned up and safe, and then I had to address my own issues. I could get scrubs like from the surgery department, but I am telling you, I was never so glad to get home and get in the shower for like 2 hours straight, because that smell I could not get out of my system. Now, you would think most employers would be like, yeah, go on home and change your clothes. But that wasn't the way it was back in the 80s when I was a brand new nurse. So, you know, was that the worst thing that ever happened to me? You know, I've had patients out of their real self hit me and things like that, but I've never been seriously hurt. I think that was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever had happen to me by a patient. So I hope you enjoyed the poo flinging story. All right. Well, happy actual New Year's Day, everyone. I hope you all had a safe and happy New Year's Eve. My plans for the evening were to go to bed. I'm kind of past my years of going out on New Year's Eve. Used to be a big deal, but I just find that, number one, I like to be asleep early. Number two, and if you wonder what I'm doing, I'm unloading what goes in the step back cupboard that I put in the boxes that hold the Santa mugs and pictures, etc. So that's what I'm doing. So, you know, it was this very safe and quiet New Year's Eve, but I have to tell you, somebody decided at midnight, which, I mean, no big deal. When you live in the country, when you live remotely, where there's not a lot of buildings and things to absorb the noise, sound really carries here. And I'm telling you, those folks over yonder had a big old party at midnight that went on and on and on and on with fireworks and hooping and hollering. So I hope they were safe and we're having a good time. And you know, you can't begrudge people celebrating, I guess, a little bit different than what I celebrate. So I am going to leave you all with a story. And I thought long and hard because I had a pretty good list of funny stories. And what I realized as I was, you know, reviewing my notes, some of these may have been painful to some of you all. If you have a loved one that's going through with dementia as a problem, you know, my mom had vascular dementia. Her arteries that fed her brain were clogged up, partly from diabetes, partly from heart disease, and that made her have a loss of cognitive or memory type function. So anyway, I don't want to do that to any of you, certainly not on New Year's Day, right? So I thought, well, I hope this won't, I mean, it's not a dirty story by any means. Dirty. It's just, I think, I would like to think it's a story of being young and stupid. So, let me show you here before I start telling the story. So a lot of what I do with my cups and such, as you see, I didn't get them all displayed, is I use like ornament dividers to put the cups in, so that helps. And I had a couple, like this is a little toothpick holder. I had some things I just didn't use this year. And as a matter of fact, as I've dug out boxes and I can't find one box that I need, who knows where I placed it, I realized just how much stuff I really have. But at any rate, so back in the day, many, many moons ago, when I was in my 20s, and I don't want to say careless, how about carefree, young and carefree. I was working in the hospital at that time in neonatal intensive care. So that was primarily a unit for babies that were born prematurely with multiple health issues like birth defects. And then because of where the hospital was, you know, and I'm just going to be honest about it, there was a lot of addicted mamas, you know, that had addicted babies. Very, very sad situation. So when you worked in neonatal intensive care, one of the things or benefits is you came in street clothes, but in order to be as sanitary as possible for the care of the children, we were provided with scrubs. And so if your baby or babies, sometimes I had one child, depending on how critically ill they were. Sometimes I had two. Sometimes if I had feeder growers, I might have a little bit more. But generally I was back in the critical pits. So I had a baby they could not get off of the breathing machine. Not I had the baby. I was taking care of the baby. So anytime your child went to surgery, you were the circulating nurse. Now, y'all might wonder, what's a circulating nurse? Well, there's a scrub nurse in the operating room and a circulating nurse. The scrub nurse is completely gowned in a sterile gown, gloves, etc. The circulating nurse might be pulling out additional trays of instruments that then the sterile nurse can access type thing. So I was the circulating nurse. Well, in order to go into the surgical suite, you had to wear surgical scrubs. You couldn't wear your NICU or neonatal intensive care scrubs into the OR. And I was like, no big deal. And this particular child was not scheduled for this bronchoscopy. So they were looking into the baby's lungs, and it was a weekend. So when I went to get my scrubs from the surgical unit, guess what? Well, hang on a minute, because I want to grab some cups, and I'm going to share with you what I did. Don't ever do this, y'all. Y'all, in an effort not to be like up, down, up, down, up, down, I thought I would just go ahead and wrap one of my pitcher and shot glass sets and finish up this story. So as I said, I was in my 20s, and I was in the phase that some of us 20-year-olds go through where you don't wear underwear. Not proud of that, but I think it was common. You got to realize this has been a lot of years ago. So when I went to get the scrubs from the surgical suite, the only thing that was left was a small shirt, which really wasn't bad. It was a little short, but, you know, covered my rear end, so to speak. But the only pants they had were like a 2XL. So what I ended up doing is taking all of the material from the pants, because they tied with a string, making a big ball right here, and then tying it like 3 times in knots. And I thought, well, this is good. You know, I can go back in my scrubs as soon as we finish this surgery. When you have very small premature babies, you have to be careful in surgery about not putting any weight on their body, because it will cause distress. And when you're doing a bronchoscopy or a look at the lungs, there is a light source cord, and they're encased in something sterile. And then there is a suction cord. Those 2 cords on a very little baby can cause some strain on the heart. So the physician or the surgeon that was doing the operation said, hey, to me, I was circulating, not scrubbed, right? So I could hold up the ends of the cords that weren't in the sterile field. Can you come over and hold up these cords? So I think I did put on sterile gloves, but I hold up the cords and I look down, and this giant wad of material that I had in front of me was now touching the sterile field. So what would you do? Well, I sucked in my stomach, and when I sucked in my stomach to get the material off of the sterile field, y'all, my pants fell down. And I want to tell you, I can tell it now, but I cried after the incident. I was so embarrassed. So here I stood in the middle of a surgery, the only nurse that could, I'll say, break sterile field, because I was the circulating nurse, but the only one in the room with my pants around the ankles, no underwears on, and just my scrub top barely covering all the vital parts. And I couldn't let go of the cords because it was a critical part of the surgery. I don't think that anyone in the room actually realized we were all done that I'd lost my pants, because I didn't say anything. But the most humiliating thing was I knew I had to bend over to pick up those pants, and in doing so, I was probably going to moon the OR, but I think I backed up against like a wall or whatever. So, you know how your mom tells you to always wear clean underwear? You never know when you're going to be in an accident. My philosophy is not only wear clean underwear, make sure you have underwear on, because you never know when your pants are going to fall down. Well, I want to thank you so much, each and every one of you, whether you've been with me all year or you just joined at the New Year's portion of 2025. I want to thank you for the time and the support you've given me. Our channel has grown slowly, or my channel, but it's our channel, right? You know, and I never really wanted to have the biggest channel in the universe and be rich and famous. That was never my goal. But I hope in 2025 we will grow some more. We will learn from each other. I hope your 2025 brings you blessings beyond your imagination. Would y'all like a cat who's banging on? Franklin, just a minute. He has to be the center of attention. He wants a drink of water. So again, Happy New Year to all of you. I plan to see you all. Let me think, what is today? Today's New Year's Wednesday. So you'll see this on Thursday. I plan to see you all on Saturday. We'll probably be doing some cooking because we're into our Three Rivers Challenge, our Pantry Challenge, our No Spin January, however you want to look at it. So I want to be sure and share some meal ideas that I will have had this week. But until then, go ahead and smash that like button and be healthy, be well, be blessed, and have a great 2025. See you soon.